Welcome, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. Please be aware that RMB Council meetings are live streamed to Facebook.com/BelfastPEI. Live stream comments are not monitored in real time during the council meeting. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that the land upon which our organization stands is unceded Mi'kmaq territory. Epiquick Mi'kmaqui is covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship. We pay our respects to the indigenous Mi'kmaq people who have occupied this island for over 12,000 years, past, present, and future. Do any members of council have a conflict of interest with any items on today's agenda? Are there any other suggested agenda items for today's meeting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, both Councilors Kinney and Bryson met the notice requirement to have a confidential in-camera HR matter item. So that will be placed at the very last item just before adjournment.
Does that need a motion?
No, that's
Unanimous decision?
because it met the 7-day requirement.
Okay.
It's an automatic.
Allow it?
I have an additional agenda item regarding the community pantry. But I see that in order for that to be on there, with a late date, it has to be agreed to by all members of council for it to become on the agenda.
So I just wanted to clarify that. So as you know, I always ask at the meeting, or Garth always asks that item 3, is there any other items that you want to discuss? And councilors will suggest another item. If nobody has a problem, we just do it. However, officially, if somebody did have a problem, any item that is suggested at the last minute would need a unanimous consent. So unless we hear somebody saying, no, I don't want to talk about it, then we basically just put it on the agenda. And it's never been an issue to date. So I just wanted to clarify that. So we can put that in, Jim, under item 16 if, unless somebody says they don't want to hear it.
Can I make a suggestion that we move it to January? Just because we have so much on the agenda. And actually, this is a second, separate line item, but there was one item that I had proposed that I was hoping that it could be held off until January as well, because the community organizations one.
Yes, as a counselor, if you're not giving unanimous consent for that for this month and suggested for January's meeting, it will meet the notice requirement for that meeting, so it would go to the January meeting. Okay, is that clear to everybody? So the community pantry item that Jim wants to add will be added in January.
And then additionally, I don't think it's on the agenda, but I had it listed on the email.
Which one was
The community, I just had it listed under community organizations, and it fits quite nicely into Jim's community pantry. So that can be discussed in January as well.
I'll just put that down as, again, community organizations,
Yes, please.
and those are both for January, okay?
But for today's, your guest.
Right, so for,
Public presentation.
that's under public.
Oh, yes, okay.
So I had no other items unless somebody else has more items. No? Okay.
I do have one other item, but it's gonna come later on anyway, and it might come on number 6. Having slogged my way through all 130 pages of the Municipal Governance Act, I discovered something that,
I think that does fall later.
pardon me,
I think that does fall later to discuss.
okay, I'll leave it for later.
Okay. So Back to you, motion.
Okay, thank you. May I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda as presented and amended, Tricia? Tricia move,
I'll second.
second by Lynn.
Yeah.
Put the names down tonight. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Motion carried. RCMP report for the month of November has been distributed at the meeting, or admin Ashley Peschuk.
So it was not distributed because I did not receive one this month. However, when I do receive it from Sergeant Robinson, I will forward it to all of council. And I will also post it under the RCMP reports on our website. So if anyone's interested in looking at incident report statistics, they're all posted there. That's where they go every month. So as soon as I get it, you'll have it. That's it for me.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Public presentations. We have one. Members of the public are offered 5 minutes to make a presentation to council. An extension is only granted if unanimous consent of council is given. Following the presentation, council may or may not ask questions. All presenters are reminded to be respectful of their comments. Do not use derogatory or improper language per code of conduct bylaw. And this little hammer, section 8-7, the Municipal Government Act, section 118.2, which would result in the expulsion from this meeting. Okay, we have a public presentator.
So I actually, as part of the ferry update, this is Jeff Joyce from Northumberland Ferries, and he actually has been really great to communicate with, and is here tonight to talk in person to our community and tell us what's going on and take it away.
Thank you, Tricia, and thanks everybody. This is my first meeting like this, so if I make a mistake on protocol or anything like that, please let me know.
You're on live TV, don't be nervous.
Oh, no, it's not my first time. I think everybody at CBC knows me by now. So, firstly, a quick introduction so you know who's, who's talking to you this evening. I actually have two roles at Northumberland Ferries and Bay Ferries. I'm the general manager at Northumberland Ferries, and I'm the vice president of marine operations for both companies. So what that means is I'm responsible and accountable for the NFL service, and I'm also responsible and accountable for the operation of our vessels. So you've got the right person to be asking questions to, and the right person to throw any eggs or tomatoes at. I certainly don't mean to make light of this whatsoever. I really do appreciate the impact that our service has had on our communities, our stakeholders, and especially our customers. And it's through various meetings and conversations I've had with truckers and the public and so forth, and it really resonates, and it's something we take very, very seriously at Northumberland Ferries. Very briefly, my background is in this field. Prior to starting my role here in July of 2022, I was at BC Ferries for about 14 years in 3 different director roles. So from developing and delivering training to running the fleet of 36 vessels to running terminal engineering department, which is responsible for the 47 terminals at BC Ferries. Prior to that, I was in the Canadian Navy for 25 years with roles in operations as well as in running the school for the naval officers. So with that out of the way, I'd like to try and give a pretty comprehensive update in 5 minutes or less. Be happy to take questions, obviously, afterwards, and if needed, I'm also happy to stick around. So clearly the critical aspect that we're currently addressing is the repair and return to service of MV Confederation. That's the main thrust of the update. And before I speak to that, the repair and return to service, I also want to acknowledge the findings of our internal investigation into this event. This event was not a mechanical failure. This was human error, in fact a series of errors, arguably from my level all the way to the mate who was operating the vessel. There's a bunch of things all of us could have done better, and certainly that's something that we're learning as much as we can from. But basically what happened was the propeller the ferry is a double-ended ferry, as everybody knows, so it has a leading and trailing propeller. And the leading propeller is used to break the momentum of the vessel as you approach the berth. That leading end was not engaged, and that was a big mistake, and it wasn't caught either. And so as a result, the momentum and the energy of the vessel's transit into the berth had to be checked up with the dolphin, and the wharf infrastructure absorbed it. And if there's anything positive out of it, there's two things. There were no serious injuries, and the vessel didn't go into the berth interface. It didn't damage the actual interface with the terminal. Had it done so, we would have had a much more significant outage and a much more expensive repair to go into. So MV Confederation is continuing to undergo repairs in Pictou, and those repairs continue to be ahead of the contractor's completion schedule, which I briefed in the media prior to tonight, that being December 9th as our return to service. But I think it's going to be earlier than that. And the $64,000 question is, well, what is that date? The problem with giving you a date is that the critical steps are the last steps that happen in the repair. So the visor is now repaired, the visor is now painted up, blasted, all ready to be installed. It'll be installed back on the vessel either tomorrow or Friday, weather depending, because there are wind limits with a 45-ton piece of equipment being maneuvered. Once that visor is in place, then the visor needs to be connected. We have dogs on, as you can imagine, that actually dog into the visor itself and hold it while we're transiting through the ocean. Those need to be welded in place. As well, all the hydraulics need to be reconnected, the electrical systems need to be reconnected. And then the actual repair needs to be inspected and tested. And that involves both a chalk test where essentially, as you can imagine, if you have chalk on either side of the interface and it goes down, you can see where it hasn't met. And then after that, a hose test is also done to make sure that there's no leakage through to the vehicle deck and we have a watertight solution. Then the repair has to be inspected and certified by Lloyd's Register, our classification society. So all of that, once the visor's on, could take as little as a week. And that's the problem with giving anybody a date. Some of those steps could not go well. And if they don't, then the timeline expands. But I'm quite confident, given what we know, that we could be in service as early as Monday, December 2nd. And then upon returning to service, MV Confederation will be operating on a 4-round trip schedule. So that's different than what we normally do. Normally in December, we're down to 3-round trips. But I've sought permission and received it from Transport Canada to expand the schedule back to our normal shoulder schedule. And that in some small way is our attempt to start to make it up to the community and stakeholders in terms of the disappointing season that we had. I also wanted to give an update on MV Fanafjord. That's more new vessel, and it's also new to us. It's not a brand new vessel, it's a 2007 build. The vessel has undergone a significant refit and modernization program in Norway. It's currently conducting sea trials off the coast of Norway. Those trials themselves have not been without their challenges. As you can imagine, it's a significant amount of complex change to the vessel, and all of that change needs to be tested and verified, and make sure we're operating within the parameters that we should be. I will tell you the vessel's looking fantastic. I think our customers will be very impressed with what you're getting. We expect the vessel to depart Norway in the first half of December, I'll say, and it's a 35-day voyage without weather implications. And why is it that long? The vessel goes all the way down off the coast of Africa before hanging right and heading due west across the Atlantic to the eastern seaboard, and then heading back up the eastern seaboard into Atlantic Canada. There will be 4 ports of call on that voyage, and that'll give us the opportunity to remain in that port and await the appropriate weather window so they have time and space to get to the next place, and so on. So again, we're expecting the vessel sometime in January, probably towards the end of January, just knowing what the weather in the Atlantic can be like at that time of year. Once here, there's lots of work that needs to be done through the winter period. Firstly, the vessel is set up for will be set up for the transit across the Atlantic, which means things like bow visors will be welded shut. That will have to be undone. We'll have fuel bladders on board to extend the legs of the vessel for that transit. That stuff will have to come off. All of the stuff that is set up specifically for the transit needs to be removed and taken ashore and so forth. And then we have a significant loadout to happen as well, where we bring our Canadian gear, equipment, supplies, and so forth on board. Concurrently with that, we're developing and delivering training to make sure our crews are completely ready. And our plan is to make sure we've got, as much as possible, all Northumberland Ferries employees cross-trained on both vessels. We will be going back into service May 1st with Confederation, but we want both vessels completely ready so that if there are any issues with Confederation, and we're not anticipating any, we've got some backup there and we've got some credibility to provide that reliable service. So yeah, I'm like I said, our intent once the vessel's here is to get that initial work done as quickly as possible, so we can have the vessel available. I'd like to get media on board. I'd like to get the public on board, have some open houses, and start making sure that people understand what the vessel is and what the capabilities of the vessel is. One of the issues with the vessel, it has a deep draft. We're awaiting our dredging project in Wood Islands, which is due to start in October of 2025, and that means that we may have some operational load restrictions at various times due to the height of tide itself. Finally, I'd like to finish once again by acknowledging the significance of the impacts this season to all our customers and stakeholders. We do not take this lightly, and we're doing our very best to rebuild the trust that the NFL has enjoyed for decades and has withered away a little bit over the last couple of seasons here. Thank you.
Open the floor to questions.
As we've talked, not your biggest fan, well, not yours, Northumberland Ferries, because of how it's impacted me, but I truly appreciate you coming out tonight and speaking. You actually provided more information than I was aware of, so thank you for that. I am curious, so I have to ask one difficult question. I am curious, I know it's been said that it's going to run until the 20th, regular time. Has there, and I appreciate the fact that you guys have increased it from 3 to 4 ferries, but what has been the discussion, like why is it not able to extend past December to try and help make up some of the run times, especially for the truckers, and compensate that way?
Yeah, it's something that we have looked into, and there are some challenges around our insurance in terms of how long that insurance is can be extended to, and that's all based on Northumberland Strait and conditions through the winter, whether there's ice or not, and so forth. So we did look into it. We are also looking into options in 2025 to look at starting our peak season earlier, get more round trips for not just our important commercial customers, but also the traveling public. And we're going to continue to work through the winter to come up with a schedule that actually provides more service than you've seen in the past couple of seasons.
And what about extending it? Like, that's one of the biggest frustrations is that, you go over and you literally, if you want a day in Halifax, it's not really doable anymore because the ferries don't run as late as they used to. Is that being looked at as well again?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. In fact, we were looking at it today, and there's another meeting early next week internally to make sure we have our ducks in a row before we start making, because I operate in a sandbox that's provided to me by by Transport Canada, so we need to make presentations to Transport Canada about any changes to the service. And so we're doing our research and making sure we've got objective evidence as to whether this can be done, whether it makes sense, and obviously the need is there. it'll be a Transport Canada decision that's enabled by our homework to make sure they're making the right decision on that. But certainly, you know, we would like to offer what the communities, the stakeholders, the customers actually need.
Okay. That's nice to hear that's being thought about. Possibly the hardest question of the night. So, like you, I also used to live in BC. I used the ferries out there. And I know that there's been a lot of talk about going Crown Corporation with Northumberland Ferries here. You yourself, BC Ferries used to be a Crown Corporation. Are you able to give any, like, kind of putting you on the spot here, and you're more than welcome to say no, but
I was asked this question once before, and my response was I welcome the opportunity to have a review conducted. You know, I mean, I believe in transparency, objective evidence of how we're performing and so on, and if it makes sense for it to be a Crown Corporation, that will come out in the wash. I'm not sure it worked in BC. That's why they moved away from it. So there's lessons to be learned there as well. I did 14 years of employment with BC Ferries, so I'm quite familiar with the context, the background, and why they are what they are, which is a pretty fantastic service without being a Crown Corporation. And I'm not against either side. So.
So what was the connection with Transport Canada, the ownership of BC Ferries Corporation before BC took it over?
It was provincial, so.
It was provincial. I understood that it was only recently taken over by the British Columbia government as a provincial Crown Corporation.
Well, so in 2003.
I guess what I'm asking is, what was the involvement of Transport Canada in that?
In what?
In the BC Ferries operation?
Well, in 2003, the company was privatized from the province to BC Ferries. Transport Canada.
Which operated as a private corporation then?
Quasi-private, I would say. The ferry, you know, and I'm dating myself here, but the contribution agreements and so forth with BC Ferries and the provincial government obviously indicate that there is more than a private relation or a private ownership.
I understand that in order to prop the service up, the BC government had to pump $500 million into that service after it became a Crown Corporation.
Yeah, there was a fair bit of investment. It was before my time. I joined BC Ferries in 2008, so it had been running that way for.
I thought this was more recent. I thought this was just recently within the last 2 years.
I'm unaware of that. Sorry.
Okay, you were looking along. So, there's no involvement with Transport Canada in the BC Ferry operation.
I'm not saying that. They're the.
Other than regulatory.
Pardon?
Other than regulatory.
No. BC Ferries does get a portion of their funding from the federal government as well. It's not. It's the province has the majority stake in providing funding towards BC Ferries, but the federal government does as well, a smaller portion, is my understanding.
Okay. It's going to come with something like that probably later on in the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, Garth.
Does the Vienna Ford, the Norwegian ferry have ice breaking capability? Is it a winter ice water vessel?
It's not an ice rated hull, no. It's so we're not looking at year-round service with that vessel.
biggest have to start with the shoulder months. That'd be good.
Yeah, and the other part of it too is that it is the truck deck is open at either end. If you remember what Sarima looks like, it's kind of like a stretched Sarima. It's a 130-meter vessel. Sarima's 100 meters. But it's the same idea where you have one ramp that comes onto the vessel and you can go downstairs, not speaking nautically here, or you can stay up on the truck deck with the higher deck expanse.
Okay.
Now, are you familiar with the operation of the ferry between the Magdalen Islands and Newfoundland? Because I believe that I read that in the Confederation Bridge contingency plan, that the plan was to move that ferry over here for 3 to 4 days a week in the event of something happening to the bridge. And I'm just wondering, is the docking facilities here capable of, because that's a bigger boat and a more ocean-worthy boat than what these ones are.
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. I can look into it.
Well, it's really important because if something ever happened with that Confederation Bridge, we can't get into a situation like the Berlin airlift. And if they're depending upon that vessel, they've kind of botched the initial part of it. I'm just wondering, if you can't get the rest of the dock because it's deep, the larger draft.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna have to look at that.
Yeah, for sure.
Catherine's next.
I'm just wondering, can you speak a little bit more, and maybe you don't have this yet, but just to the dredging, I fully admit I am not well versed in that, but I have heard concerns. So if you could just,
Sure,
I'm
sure.
sure you've already heard those concerns, so if you could speak to that.
Well, again, that is a Transport Canada project, so it's not something I can comment on in detail, but I will say that the depth of the dredge channel and berthing area on the other side in Caribou is to 5.5 meters below chart datum. And in Wood Islands and through the Steels right now, that's at 4.5 meters. So the intent of the dredging project is to dredge this side down to the same depth as Caribou, 5.5 meters. And that I understand to be starting in the fall of 2025, or at least something is going to be starting in the fall of 2025.
So did I understand you correctly, up until that point, that there's gonna be load restrictions on the Canafort?
When we get down to a zero tide or negative tide, there may be some, and we're talking about, you know, if we normally have 12 full trucks on, it might be less than that, and it depends on the day. It depends on what depth of water is available on the given day. Yeah.
So just to clarify, if we, as councillors, receive questions specific to the dredging, we should send them to Transport Canada?
Affirmative, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Robert, a question?
From what I've heard, there's been a boat bought by Transport Canada and retrofitted by Transport Canada. They knew the specs for the boat. They know the specs for the dock. And we're hearing this evening that dredging is not going to start till October of '25. I can't imagine somebody thinking ahead that far and not being able to plan quicker than that.
Well,
And it's got nothing to do with you guys.
No,
I'm
no.
not saying that.
The only thing I would offer is that that was what was available on the open market.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
You know, so it's a solution I think that's going to work really well.
Yeah, it'll work, but the problem is, you know what you're gonna be faced with next year, I don't care. You're gonna have tides, you're gonna have winds, you're gonna have lows, and you're gonna have half-full boats because of those
Right.
conditions. And you know what you're gonna hear from the public? How come we got a boat that can only be filled half the time? Why doesn't Transport Canada be able to think ahead far enough and start the dredging in October 24 versus October 25? I don't understand that. But if I'm running the farm, I got a plan for when my crop goes in the ground and the seeds I'm gonna plant, fertilizer I'm gonna use. And I do it ahead of time. I think it would behoove this council to write a strong worded letter to Transport Canada. Ask them to explain why. And if there's no reasonable expectation, why it can't be done anytime in the spring. Like, why does it have to start in October 25? It should be started now.
I just want to clarify that there's a whole daisy chain of events before the dredging actually starts. It has to happen in terms of environmental assessments and all that sort of stuff. That work has been ongoing for some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you know, again, I can't speak for a project that's not mine, but my appreciation is they are working as hard as they can to make sure that it's done as early as possible, which doesn't meet your needs, I understand that. But I also just want to clarify that when we're talking about reductions in operational load due to tide restrictions, we're not talking about half the traffic not being able to get on half the days. We're talking about small numbers of reductions in the loaded trucks at specific times on a specific day based on the semi-diurnal tide cycle. So it's not black or white, and I'm not trying to, you know, simplify or complexify it, but it is a complicated thing that we have to calculate to make sure that we're not touching bottom as
But if you're a business owner and a trucker who lands down the wharf on that right day at that right time, and you can't get across, that's what I'm saying is not acceptable.
well, and yeah,
And you can't predict that, and neither
yes, we
can they.
can. Yes, we can.
Can you?
Yes, that's exactly the point. So what we intend on doing is making sure that we have communicated with the truckers and we have a meeting on Friday with a bunch of the truckers in the Wood Islands at the boardroom, and if you haven't been invited yet, I can certainly take your name and you can join, and we can have a further conversation on it. But yeah, I want to be able to tell, you know, via our website or via our feeds or whatever, next week on Monday, we're taking 9 trucks, or next week on Monday is our worst, and we're taking 5 trucks. The day after, we're back up to full load. So it's the tide cycle is predictable. What isn't predictable is the wind speeds, which, you know, with sea and swell can actually result in shallower water at various times, right? Just through the troughs and peaks of the waves.
No, that sounds good. I guess I'll get back to my original point. I don't think it would hurt this council a bit if they would send a strongly worded letter to Transport Canada asking them why this hasn't happened earlier. Because to buy a, what is it, how much the boat cost? Ship cost?
It's a good question.
Well, it's over 30 million bucks. And you can't think far enough ahead, knowing the specs for the boat, to have the channel dredged out before it starts operation. I just don't understand that.
Well, let me try and clarify. So the Fanafjord project was put into place as a result of the Holiday Island fire.
Yeah.
So that was in July of 2022, and based on the timeline from then till now, it's not a lot of time when it comes to, first of all, finding a ship that is, you know, Goldilocks solution for us, getting it retrofitted, getting it modernized, getting it across the pond. And if it isn't, to your point about a draft that, you know, has some operational impacts, figuring out how to get the dredging done in advance. Like I said, the daisy chain leading up to the actual dredging is extensive due to a lot of legitimate, obviously, environmental studies that need to be done, planning that needs to be done, where's the material going, you know, and so forth. So.
No, I'm just an ordinary person. I don't understand all this stuff. All I do know is I've seen dredging happen there before. I know where the material went. Simple solution, do it all over again and plan ahead. And it's not nothing against you guys.
No,
I'm just thinking that it wouldn't hurt the council to write a letter to Transport Canada, expressing their disappointment, because you're gonna be getting the flag next year somehow. I know you. I know how it works.
Yeah,
And that's not fair.
Yeah, and what we're going to do to try and make sure that there is this transparency with our customers is, like I say, build out so people, truckers, etc., can actually understand when is the best time to make a reservation, so you have travel certainty and you can get your loads across and make your 2 round trips a day if that's what your business is. So again, it's something that we're planning all through this winter as well, and I hope to talk to you again in the spring and see what you think of the plan, and hopefully that'll give you enough certainty so you can adjust your schedules and so on. I'm not disagreeing with your point about Transport Canada.
I don't know a truck, but I have friends and family who are involved in the business, and they have moved off the ground because of this. I just don't want it to happen again. So,
Understood. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions for representative?
Thank you for
Coming,
coming.
Jared?
Yeah,
Appreciate your time.
I really do appreciate the opportunity. I would like more opportunities like
I was
this.
gonna say, the offer is always, I will send you
Okay.
our council meetings.
We're here every 3rd Wednesday.
Yep, and if you have an
Except
update or you
December.
just wanna come and say hey, you're always welcome.
Awesome.
So thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your
Thank
time
you.
tonight.
Much
Thank
appreciated.
you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public presentations? Okay, adoption of the October 16, 2024 regular council meeting minutes. Attached, previously distributed, all changes incorporated. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve these minutes as presented? Moved by Tricia. Seconder Billy. All in favor? Nays? Motion carried. Business arising from the October 16, 2024 minutes of the council. None. CAO report. Mr. Brooks?
Thank you. As you can see by our financial report, we are very healthy at the moment. In fact, our financial position, especially after the clean audit we just had as well, we are in the best financial health that this organization has ever been in. The expenditures are on track to October 31 and on track and as expected. Basically, the vast majority of all the community grants are paid out except for the ones that trickle on until March. Other than that, we, as mentioned before, we get an extra $2,818 a month. So we're expecting that we'll end up probably being in a surplus position of over $20,000 to $25,000 by the end of the year. And also, because of cash flow, we had to cash in the GIC in order to cover the generator that we had committed to on our share. So everything is happening as per expected and as per normal. That's it for me.
Okay, don't go far, you're next. Official community plan and development bylaw.
Okay, so as you know, we had our last public meeting on the official community plan and development bylaw from documents presented by FOTAN. And we also had our own contracted rural development officer check it out to see if it met a rural lens. We also had discussions with GPI lands to see if there was any concerns. Both the development officer had some concerns about marrying the development or the official plan and the development bylaw. All those things are doable, changes are doable. Lands, however, suggested that there was a number of things that they would like to fix in the document should we decide to go forward with it at this time. You've already seen all the things that were written up about the background of how we got to where we are, including the matrix that was done that included everybody's comments into the new draft official plan where possible. For council's information, if RMB were to take on the planning portfolio from the province, it is expected RMB would deal with approximately 60 to 80 development permit applications per year and the associated appeals that might come with it. Projected operating costs for a development officer, a municipal enforcement officer, legal fees, auditor fees, administration equipment, etc., would be approximately $100,000 annually. And then both Ashley and I, when we attended the Association of Municipal Administrators, it was confirmed by Municipal Affairs that their estimate was also $100,000 should we decide to take on the administration role for lands. Per annum, yes. Actually, Kevin also mentioned that during a meeting that we had with Lands and Municipal Affairs. So $100,000 is a good ballpark figure as to how much it would cost if we were to take that on. So based on all that information below, there's three options presented for council consideration regarding an official plan and development bylaw for the municipality. Option one is to accept the FOTAN Planning Inc. October 2022 draft official plan and draft development bylaw documents for information only. RMB would archive the FOTAN documents, the lands concerns, and the rural development officer concerns until an RMB council decided to reopen those discussions. It was advised that if we were going to reopen those discussions, it would have to be sooner than 5 years. Any later than, if it's 5 years or later, then basically what you would do is start the process over again, except that you would now have all this archived information that you could feed into whatever new process you decide to do. So RMB would monitor the GPI progress on a new lands plan which they're developing, which they expect could take anywhere from 3 to 5 years.
Oh my Lord.
And what effect that new land plan would have on RMB. RMB would also monitor the GPI progress on new funding model for municipalities that take on the planning portfolio and its effect on RMB. Currently, if you have an official plan and development bylaw, there is a small tax credit that you would qualify for, and working it out with Kevin, that would mean, in our case, an approximate $15,000 toward a $100,000 bill. So, as you can imagine, all the municipalities have a problem with that idea, and so Municipal Affairs is going to be negotiating with the government in power, also through the Federation of PEI municipalities, because there's going to have to be extensive consultation with all municipalities across the whole island for that. And speaking of which, that lands plan is also something that we would want to provide our input into the FPIM, so that they can feed the comments about the lands plan and how it affects our municipality, or a rural municipality in particular. So that would be an important thing.
Do you want to clarify who Kevin is for people?
So is Municipal Affairs, Kevin McCarville. So that was the first option, is to accept it for information, and then we would continue to monitor those other things that I talked about. Option 2 would be to accept the FOTAN Planning Inc. October 22 draft official plan and draft development bylaw documents, and add the changes supplied by Lands and the Rural Development Officer. After incorporating all the council approved changes, RMB would bring forward to a council meeting for conditional approval. With council conditional approval, RMB would then submit the RMB official plan and development bylaw to the GPI for ministerial approval, and if approved, council would then decide on the date that this document should come into force. The reason that would be a consideration, if council approved it and the government approved that, we're figuring out when it should come into force. However, when it should come into force would also depend on when we have budgeted for that additional $100,000 that's automatically in the budget annually. And that the only way to do that would probably be accomplished by raising taxes to be able to have a plan and bylaw come into force. Option 3 would be to not accept the FOTAN Planning Inc. October draft official plan and draft development bylaw and start the process over again. That could start as soon as RMB have found a new source of funding. It would have, after we find a new contractor, after RMB use all the information previously gathered, and that could start as soon as whichever council decides to do it. My recommendation is to go with option 1 because that would complete the FOTAN contract that we have through the Infrastructure Secretariat funding that they provided us with. And it would allow us to have all that, or archive all the information and lessons learned that we already have, so that either this council or the next council could start it, well, as soon as they wanted, but conceivably, probably in a couple of years, because there's a lot on our plate that we have to accomplish between now and the end of this council term. So I would recommend that you go with the accepting it for information. That will clear off our infrastructure secretariat commitment. It will clear off our FOTAN commitment, and it would provide us with all that archival information.
Question, there'd be no point in going to option 2 when the land's gonna be a new lands plan.
That's right. Lands had said that they don't know, once the new lands plan is in force, they don't know if it's something that's going to be required upon MGA communities or not. And Municipal Affairs said, well, they currently do not or no longer require municipalities that don't have an official plan and development bylaw to have one before the new lands plan is in place, the new funding is in place. So it really would not benefit us
No?
to
Sign off on
accept or
something.
sign off on it, because, and the point I sort of glossed over is lands, when they reviewed those documents, they said they have a lot of concerns. So even if we were to do that, it's gonna take probably a considerable amount of time, and for us to contract somebody like the rural development officer to work with lands to come up with a new draft anyway. So we're better off just accepting it for information. Like I said, it clears off the contracts, and then we'll be able to work with the government of PEI and work with the FPIM as the government works through their model of a lands plan and municipal funding model for municipalities to take on a planning role.
Yes, Mr. Gibbon.
Question, so in that lands meeting, one of the gentlemen said that he would send his comments. Did we receive them?
No. As you, as we've witnessed in the past, anytime we get a commitment to get notes and whatnot from the government, they seem to take a long time.
So we didn't get the notes either from the meeting?
We did just receive the notes.
Okay,
However, I sent them back with, well, what about this and this? You didn't say anything about this or this or this. They didn't like the notes that I had done myself because,
too detailed.
no, it said things that they didn't want said. I said them, so I put them in the notes. Anyway, they did provide the notes, but I sent back a number of things that they were missing,
Okay.
including who was at the meeting. Anyway, so they haven't given us the new notes. So once they give us the new notes, I'll be sending them out to everybody.
And maybe you can follow up to see if they're still planning on sending the comments
Yes.
on the bylaws and plan?
Yes, because we'll want to have them for our archival files for when we, or if we decide to do the next iteration of an official plan.
And someone mentioned in that meeting that they weren't completely sure that we would be clear with our infrastructure secretariat contract. Had you spoken
Yes.
to someone since then?
At the AMA Association of Municipal Administrators meeting, I spoke to Curtis. He's the representative that we deal with. And I walked through the process, everything that had been done, and the fact that Municipal Affairs no longer requires it, but that they completed their contract. And if we accept it for information, then we've completed our end as well.
Okay.
So, not having it in writing, having only had a conversation, I'm 99% sure that there won't be any problem. However, when I see it in writing, I'll be happier.
So then, On the flip side of that, if we did option 3, that would mean that we'd pay back the funding, because we would not have completed it.
Right. So it's not to our advantage. Option 3 is not to our advantage, neither is option 2. But,
In your opinion?
in my opinion, but option 1 basically allows us to do another official plan whenever we're ready. But more importantly, whenever the government of PEI has some clear guidelines about what's gonna happen if we have it.
But we're still able to use the groundwork that we've done.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
big
we'll
thing.
be able to use all that information.
Anybody else with any questions or comments? Really? Catherine, go ahead.
So, in my eyes, we're not in a position to even make this vote yet. For a few reasons, but the main reason is not all of council was able to attend that meeting. And we've not even been provided notes from that meeting. So therefore, how can I as a counselor make an educated decision on where we should be going? It's purely based on a few opinions.
Yes, it was myself, Charlie, Billy, and Ashley that attended on behalf of RMB.
Correct. But myself, I haven't seen those documents, so I find it very difficult to even make a decision.
You think that
without
the councillors would lie to you?
No, but I don't understand why I can't do my due diligence to review documents myself before making my vote, because after all, it is my vote. So it's not that I don't trust anyone here, it's that I trust myself to review documents and make my own decision based on that information. Also, I see, the number of 100,000 being pushed out. However, you said we were in surplus of $25,000, so that drops it down. And then we will be provided some extra. So really the number, based on those numbers provided right in front of me, would be down to 60,000.
For year 1.
For year
For year 1. Yeah. Obviously FPIM is, advocating for a much better pay balance. But that's all skeptical too, like we have no idea. I guess the way I see it right now, 2 points. As council, we haven't even come together as a group to review this document in a whole. Obviously we've had time to do it ourselves, but we've had no discussion about actually going through each of the bylaws and providing, we provided it initially, but as a group we've not sat down and looked at it. I get frustrated myself, and again, not, from this world, I don't know how government works, but I get frustrated that we have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to employ someone, a planner from Toronto, to create these documents when we can't even review the documents ourselves to provide the comments as a group together. Before saying, we have to hire these people to do these studies, to make the changes. I don't understand why we can't at least provide some of that together.
Could I just make a clarification?
Yeah.
Okay, so the documents that FOTAN originally gave us, they were provided to the previous council.
Mm-hmm.
They did review the documents along with the public, and they expressed all their concerns. There was a lot of them. That's how
Yeah, a lot of them.
you were there.
I still have more.
Yes, and they created a matrix that made changes, the possible changes were made, the ones that were not possible were explained. So council did have its chance for review of the documents for quite a few months prior. Then they made comments at the public meetings, and then it was paused. And then what happened was FOTAN created the new drafts. They put it on the website. Well, actually we did. We put it on the website so that the public could review them and the council could review them, and council and the public were all invited to another public meeting where they expressed what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it. And then we also heard from a rural development officer to say what concerns that they had. And so council,
And ample time.
council did have a few opportunities to express what their concerns were. Oh, there was one other one, is that we had also set up a meeting with Lands, or actually they set it up with us, so that they could answer any questions that we may have. And they specifically talked about concerns that they had with the documents. But council, through Councillor McGivern, Councillor Gamble, and myself and Ashley, brought those concerns to Lands, and they spoke to those. So the only part that we're missing is the notes. You haven't seen the notes from that meeting yet, and as I explained, I'll send that to you right away. So it is possible that we can leave this decision and defer it to the meeting in January. Irregardless, FOTAN's contract is finished. They had committed to do a certain number of meetings, a certain amount of work. So their contract is finished regardless. So should we decide that we want to carry on, make changes to it, we would hire probably, I'm just guessing, the rural development officer. That person would make the changes that we want, that we heard from Lands, that we heard from himself, and that we heard from council as to whatever changes you want to make to that document. If you decide you want to carry on, if you decide that, well, there's too many things that the government of PEI still have to work out, and municipal affairs have actively told municipalities they would rather you did not approve an official plan at this point, because they're still working out some things. And that's why I'm making the recommendation that you accept what we've done for information. That way you can add whatever you want to, once you start up the process again. You can start up the process next year if you want, or as soon as you're comfortable that the government of PEI has answered the questions that we had concern about and that they have concerns about, before you launch into the process again. Did I know,
Well, I
Charlie and Billy, did I miss anything from what you heard?
I think I'm just not explaining myself
Okay.
properly, but I just mean, as a group, we've not sat down and read through the document as a group and offered opinions in an open discussion. Up till now, it's only been individual comments. And to be fair, my initial individual comments were not all of the comments, because I didn't understand how the process worked, and I assumed there would be an open discussion at some point through this process. So that's what I meant by that. I guess the way I see it right now is if we just, regardless if we stop it, if we table it, you know, we're still in the same position that I guess we are now. Why we've always been in this mess is we have no leg to stand on against anything that's ongoing in our communities. And I don't really want to bring it up, but I mean, you see everything that's going on in Three Rivers, and obviously constituents in Belfast are very concerned about that. The way it stands now, it's all provincial hands. And to me, that was the whole reason why we were beginning this process. I mean, forget the MGA. There's plenty of municipalities that have an official plan without the MGA requirements. To me, having an official plan, the land bylaws, whatever it's called, you know, it provides us the opportunity to shape our future, to say this is what we want the future of our municipality to look like. This is how we want it to stay. If we want it to stay rural, we have that option. If we want to build it up like Stratford, I guess we have that option. I guess I see, if we do stop, my opinion is that we've just wasted taxpayer dollars, regardless if that came directly from our municipality taxpayer dollar or it came from a secretariat fund. That money all comes from taxpayers, so I guess that's my view.
I think that I might just push back a little bit on that, because the work that was done will, if this were to be picked back up in a year, would be a substantial foundation for carrying on. And I'd say that it's probably maybe not fair to say that it was a waste of money, because when it was initiated, it was a requirement. And it wasn't something that the municipality or the previous council said, oh, this might be a good idea, let's do that. It was more, we have to do this. And so
We got a good deal.
I think so. Yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from, because I think that, you know, your perspective is that it's important that we have the planning function at some point in the near future, because it allows us to control how the community is shaped in the future. So I can understand what you're saying from that. I think that there's also kind of a perspective of not sure if we can fund it,
Right.
because it would most likely mean a significant increase in property taxes in order to be able to fund, even if the $100,000 is high, even if it was $75,000, it's
Per
not.
year.
Per year.
You can't ask people to do that per year, that's charter.
And
For
so-
60 to 80 building permits? No. No way.
I think my thing is there's still questions. I think there's too many questions for me to be able to make a solid answer.
Jim?
Yeah, I have to comment on it. When I first came out to council, it took about 5 minutes when I was through to the MGA to take a look at the contents of it, to realize that there's absolutely no chance in the world of it ever coming forward to this community. I know a little bit about the rural nature of it, and I know a little bit about the people that live here and have lived here for a long time. If you think you saw a firestorm over the annexation, you could see a lot worse if you start trying to raise taxes to cover this kind of nonsense in a tiny little community that it's in the middle of nowhere. Pardon me for saying that, but really so far away, we are a rural community way out in the middle.
Take it easy.
Yeah. Well, it was ridiculous to start it even from the start, because there's no absolute chance of it ever taking place. So it's just nothing but a big waste of time and effort.
According to Minister Lance, it was gonna happen very, very soon.
You know,
At that time,
according to Mr. Myers, it's not going.
Mr. Myers and Mr. Lance had two different opinions when they started. Anyway,
Anyway, we are right where we started from. No official plan, no annexation. It was never gonna happen. So I don't think we should waste our time even thinking about it.
If I can interject, so one of the things that this point raises is the council has to make a decision. One of the options, you'll notice it says option 4 is other. Option 4 could have been you want to defer a decision to January or March or April or May or whatever. However, what,
just a minute, Jim, he's speaking.
if you remember during the conversation when I introduced it, Municipal Affairs was very adamant that they didn't want municipalities to approve this yet because they have new questions of their own that they didn't originally have when they put it into the MGA. And I also might remind everybody that the MGA itself the government had been asking rural municipalities their opinion on the MGA for 8 years, and there was no comments. So because there was no comments, they assumed there was no problems. So of course, then they passed the MGA, and then poof, geez, there's a whole bunch of problems. What we're trying to do this time is avoid that. We have a counselor who is actually on the FPIM board to make sure that rural comments and perspectives are included in the discussions, so that when the government asks their opinion, they will get the rural perspective, which they didn't get for the MGA. But when they're doing the lands plan and they're doing the rural extra money for municipalities that have a lands plan, or I should say a development plan.
Tax share.
Yeah, that they would get actually opinions from the various rural municipalities to say what they think. Do they like, do they not like, what it should be, whatever. Those two questions are the biggest reason for staying with information only at this time, because the government themselves said, hold on, we have a couple things to work out before we ask you to make a decision on an official plan. So by selecting option 1, I'm suggesting it allows you to do just like Councillor Bryson says, and once the government has answered their own questions, we could carry on and figure it out. One of the things that I neglected to mention at the lands meeting was that we posed the question, well, if you're not going to allow us to do the official plan so we can let them know, we want to find out about a process now where, similar to the CIC that Robert talked about last month, and other councillors Jim talked about last month, that said, well, why don't we just, get them to tell us what's going on. So now, because of the fact that the GPI is not requiring the MGA anymore, they're trying to work out a system where that can happen. Did I get that correct, Charlie?
I did not understand that, but maybe I missed it.
Okay, so basically in my discussions with them, they're gonna try and look at a process, because originally this was gonna be their process. Now the government's pulling back, and so we said we still have concerns. We want to express our opinions about what's going on in our area. So they're gonna see if they can come up with, as part of the lands plan, if there's a way that municipalities can speak to their concerns.
Jim,
I want to make a motion that we just vote on it and accept it.
speak up so Ken.
I would like to make a motion that we just vote on it and we accept option number 1, stop talking about it. In 10 years, they're still going to be talking about the same thing. There's going to be none of this is going on.
Catherine had something to add.
Yeah, just a question / clarification. So you stated earlier that Municipal Affairs has asked us to stop,
Yes.
essentially. But
That's
they're
why we paused in 2022.
right, but they're looking at a 3 to 5 year plan. I mean, it's probably gonna be long.
Realistically.
It's probably gonna be longer than that, let's be honest. And so I guess, to Charlie's point, like, what are the chances that we're actually gonna pick this up in a year's time,
What
right?
difference?
So, no, but it does make a difference, because all of that work, sure, it will be tabled, but didn't Photian say that within 5 years, everything is obsolete? We have to start from scratch again?
Yes, so typically, I have been involved in 5 official plans for our municipality. And typically what happens is that a municipality would renew or do a whole new official plan every 5 to 7 years.
So we would have been doing
And-
it anyway.
And
Potentially.
yes, so what the point that Photen was making is if you wait 5 years, you're gonna have to start over again anyway, which is correct. If you start up the process in 1 or 2 years, you can take the document that you have already, make the changes that were suggested by Lance, make the changes suggested by the rural development officer, and then
That
carry
is
on
day
from there.
one. Then, although our information is 1 or 2 year old, when we implement it, it is day one.
So you can start at any time with that. But the recommendation is that if it takes longer than 5 years to get it started, you might as well start over and hire a new contractor, do it all, find funding, find a contractor, whatever. But
I
at
just-
least you would have all this background information.
Yeah, I just find it so absurd, you know, they put these requirements in, we did it, we wasted, to me, honestly.
No,
No, but it is. If we're not going to do something, sure, we have the information, but it's just like annexation. I wasted my time doing that research. I feel that. It's the same thing. I feel like we've wasted our time, we've wasted our money, and now municipal affairs is saying, oh, well, no, don't do it. Like, it's just absurd to me how inefficient this entire system is. And,
Well, I think,
no, I know, but it's
Not
just,
getting
it's
any argument from
ridiculous.
anybody.
yeah.
I know, but like, it's just.
We're glad the
blows my
lights are on
mind.
now.
when I was with government, you know, we called it grist for the mill, because we all understood what it was grist for the mill.
Yeah, I
That's all it
know.
was.
Just make work
And it's very
projects,
frustrating, make work projects.
get people's, yeah. anyway.
Grist for the mill, that's all it is. I had a motion on the floor.
Yes, any more comments? Okay, Jim has a motion on the floor.
Moved by Jim, and seconded by, well, actually, what's going to be your motion? Are you suggesting option one?
We accept option one as,
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, people, to accept option one.
I second it.
Charlie?
We have a seconder, is Charlie. As described above, regarding the RMB direction for the Potan Planning Inc. official plan and development permits documents. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? 5 and 1. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Have a drink, Bob.
I think I would.
Okay, up next is our strategic plan update. Mr.
Okay,
Brooks.
I would like to thank Councilor Bryson because it was a very timely request. The strategic plan, as you know, we did a strategic plan at the beginning of the council term. And the request was, could we get an update on the progress of the strategic plan? You will see in the 5 pages and the 4 days that it took to do this strategic plan update, that this council and administration have been very, very busy. We provided you a copy of the strategic plan for background documentation. But suffice it to say, we had it broken down by 4 yearly increments. In 2023, we accomplished every single item on the strategic plan that was identified, and by far, which we said it would happen. New to the strategic plan was a section called advocacy. So this item in particular can take hundreds of hours each, depending on the issue. And it may be issues that are taken on by councilors and or administration or both. So the advocacy portion of it, well, it's a very long list of all the things that we did, and every single one of these items are listed in one of our agenda items over the 12 months. So every one of them is documented and have minutes and discussions from. So all 2023-24 strategic plan items were completed or, and most importantly, exceeded. So we far exceeded what we said we wanted to accomplish. We said we wanted to accomplish this, we actually accomplished this. So we were very busy. In 2024-25, we've only got 7 months under this report, and we've already accomplished all of the 2024-25 strategic plan items and exceeded what we said we wanted to happen in that amount of time. The problem,
Don't say problem.
well, yeah, I was gonna say, it's problematic, and it's also a sign of a very active and healthy council and municipality when they are able to not only achieve their strategic plan, but far exceed it. And in this case, for this year, that is in just 7 months. That tells you, when I say it's problematic, is because we only have a certain number of staff and a certain number of council members, but you're achieving so much in that small amount of time that you literally barely have any room for anything else. That said, that doesn't stop council from saying, hey, we should look at this also, and we should look at that also. And so everybody pitches in and we try to achieve all that, right? But suffice it to say, it takes up a lot of time to do what we're doing, but we've been able to manage that amount of time. So I wanted to just summarize the last 3 things. All 24-25 strategic items have been addressed already, completed, or exceeded. However, most items are still ongoing, as RMB is only starting its 8th month of its 24-25 fiscal year. The remainder of this fiscal year is already and planning to be as busy, especially with a very big Christmas event, introduction, promotion, selection of new CCBF projects, which is going to allocate approximately $600,000 to the community and or RMB, and the work toward the new office space and the sublease search. I'm actually going to get Ashley to speak to the sublease search in a second, but the 25-26 and 26-27 strategic items are attached and should continue to expand as RMB relevance and exposure to our municipal residents continues to grow. And just as an example, RMB can often get 300 to 800 views, participants on the RMB's Facebook feed during and or after every single council meeting. So there's a lot of interest in what we're doing in the municipality, and it continues to achieve all of the strategic plan items that we have. So I'd ask Ashley if you want to speak to the sublease search, because council had asked to try and have a health-related sublease.
Just a quick correction, the viewers on the live stream, it's actually a lot more than that. It can get up to 1,300 views 24 hours after we broadcast.
Okay.
So last Wednesday, I was approached by the lovely owner-operators of the Sweet Company, and they wanted to inquire about the space in the train station. Previously, the council had voted that this space is reserved for a health-related vendor. However, I wanted to bring this forward to council to revisit, since other options up for consideration are no longer interested in using that space. Allowing the Sweet Company to set up a space to produce their fudge in that small segment of our office would help to support a small but growing local business, and it would also be a source of consistent income for RMB. So I will leave it with you for open discussion.
Ice cream is healthy.
It's fudge. They're making
They
fudge.
have ice cream in their other shop.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So you know, I was the one that had mentioned the health, idea. There was a couple of people that I knew that were interested in it. However, given the time that took for it to come to fruition, they have now since found other location. You know, I've kind of tried finding other places and seeing who's interested. The reality is that we're down in Wood Islands, we're not Montague,
Yeah.
we're not Charlottetown, and as much as I desperately would love to see something health related in there, the reality is that come April, we have a larger building and we have a higher rent. And if we're able to have a company that is guaranteed income right from the get-go, I support this. They're a local business. They are bringing business people to our area. So although it's not health, it may not be health now, it could be health later. And I also suspect, knowing a bit of their operation, is that they're not going to need to do renovations to the area. That significantly would have been done by potentially other person that might be renting it. So that's why I'm supportive of this.
I can add to that as well, because RMB had a few health leads that we followed up on that also fell through that were not interested. So that's when this came in our door, and
Kind of a blessing.
it could start as quick as April 1. Well, we're due to go in April 1. Oh, and by the way, I confirmed all the information that I had talked about before as far as the lease goes. It works out to about double, it's double the space, so the fee is about double. However, after the sublease and other changes, it would cost us approximately $200 more per month than it is now for double the space.
Anybody else want to discuss? Go ahead.
I think I would like personally, and I don't know if this is the correct term because I don't do this kind of thing, but is it a tender? Is that what it would be called? Like, just to put a notice out in the public somehow. I know we've discussed it on the live streams. I know, you know, our minutes have been on our website, but perhaps something more.
That is the correct term, you're right, Catherine.
Okay, perhaps something more out in the open, I don't know, perhaps the newspaper or something. That's personally what I would like to see, just in the, so then someone can't come back at us and say, oh, I didn't know, I didn't hear, and then, you know, it looks like we're just.
And yes, that is, so we still have the time, because I just confirmed all the parameters with WIDAC this morning about what's happening with the lease and all that kind of. So I have the information, so we could do a call for you know, tenants. So then, but is the call for tenants for any tenant, or is the call for health related only tenant?
Well, I think if we're considering,
Maybe
you know, the candy
Other
shop,
options,
that we
yeah.
just open it up to
Right.
anyone, and then at least everyone has had their fair chance. Cause you know, that's some criticism I hear from various government is that, you know, oh, you got that because you know those people, and I don't want this to become that
So we
problem.
definitely have time to send out notifications in our own system as well as the newspaper systems, call for tenants, and then
We want to,
we would be able to take a look at the what we receive, and then we could make a decision as to when it goes. The people from the sweet factory would automatically,
The sweet company.
sweet company would automatically be included.
I just want council to recognize that it's not just putting out a tender, it's, you know, responding to all said applications, and then perhaps doing showings of that space, and so there is quite a bit of admin time involved
Yes.
definitely is.
in this process, and I just want council to be aware of that,
Yes.
that it's gonna be very time consuming.
However, that said, we would want to make a decision as to who the tenant's going to be by the end of January, because the tenant needs to be able to do whatever they need to do to move in for April 1.
Right.
So, because it's a change of direction, if I could have a motion that we do a call for tenants, or any tenant, and that's key, any tenant, for the sublease space, to start for April 1, I would need a motion because that's a change of direction.
Do we want to have any other discussion before we put a motion on the floor? Does anybody else got anything to say? Jim,
I've got a few,
is it regarding this motion?
not regarding that motion.
Okay, let's try to keep on track. Do we have any discussion on the motion that is about to come to floor?
So that was Tricia.
I'll second.
Catherine, second.
And I think, you know, I hear what you said about having it in for there, but I think we need to put applications must be in by.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah, we'll do all that.
Yeah,
Tender deadline and stuff, and Ashley is correct, and very much so, that it's a ton of.
it's a ton of work.
There's a ton of work to be added.
Did I mention we were busy?
Where are we on the agenda?
We're,
We're still on number 10.
11.
No, we're still on number 10.
Okay.
So anyway, for any tenant, there's a motion for us to advertise for any tenant for April 1.
All in favor of said motion that's on the floor for the tenants?
Aye.
Nays?
Okay.
Motion carried. Deadlines and-
Actually, no.
Catherine?
No, Jim, if what Jim is now talking about, the strategic plan update.
Well, I just noticed that a lot of these items that are on here, that I don't, like, they were talked about in council, but there was no action on them that I am aware of. And there's all kinds of them here.
Right, so the point in the strategic plan was advocacy, and they wanted to be able to have dealings with the, within the municipality to give updates about what's going on and or participate. So some items had minimal, some items had, for example, transportation or bus transit within our municipality that actually had meetings from us with the ministers. So some had a small amount. Shop Belfast, for example, had a very large amount. So some items had a little bit of action, but it could have been a little bit of action by a councillor, and or it could have been a lot of action by a councillor and or administration, whatever. As I said, if you look in the agenda for each month, that's where those items came from. It wasn't anything other than was actually on the agenda.
Yeah, all I have to go on is, we now finally keep a correspondence log, which tells me any correspondence that went out, where there was actual work involved in responding to something. And we never did get to the point, I know that within government, this is something that they use throughout government to try to develop an understanding of what's involved, is we have no record of people actually visiting the municipal council office with questions or with requests for any kind of service. So I have no way to quantify actual activity by anybody. I mean, there's a few we're aware of. I know that Ashley did some things with that, what they call that, the flyers.
I did a lot of work with Shop Belfast this year,
Yes, I don't know.
a ton of work with Shop Belfast this year.
absolutely.
Not to mention, like, there's a bunch of things on here that go on behind the scenes that we don't necessarily give you an update on every minute of every second, because they're ongoing. Same with the municipal emergency management plan. That took up a huge amount of time this year for me.
The reality is that if you had given an update on every single thing that you do, except for you to have your
Yes,
electric
yeah,
or your
My
water,
whole life would be
you
giving
wouldn't be able to
updates.
do anything. I think that's a little bit over the top expecting that.
So
That's why I used items that were actually published in our agenda, was actually on our agenda minutes. Every single one of these items were in our minutes.
Are you bringing it up, Jim, as a justification for the office? Like, not for the staff, but for the office space itself? Is that like what your purpose
Not really,
is?
but I suppose that I could bring it up for that. So I understood that one of the main reasons for the having to have the expanded room in the office, that we were gonna have to hire, on the assumption we were gonna be hiring a development officer, which is gonna require a bunch of office space, which is no longer in place, which we don't need. And to me, that was very obvious right from the start. I recall I voted against it, so did Catherine, as a matter of fact.
Originally, did you want me to respond to that?
Well, there's no.
Because originally we did say that one of the things that was gonna happen is if we took on the official plan or even annexation, it was going to mean more staff in order to do the operation. What I'm telling you now is that the strategic plan is a beautiful example of how it takes, currently we have 3 staff looking after this, all this information, and I can tell you it's only getting busier. As, because we wanted to lock the space in for future as the municipality grows, because we've had, well, Garth will be able to attest that we've had significant growth in this municipality since January of 2019. Every year it keeps getting busier and busier and busier, and we're bringing on more as we do more and more projects. So in some cases, we're gonna need to have space to contract people, depending on the projects we decide to do. During the budget that's coming up, you're gonna be looking at the budget and say, okay, we'll now have a certain amount of money for projects, or even with the CCBF. If there's a project you wanna do, we may have to contract somebody and they'll be working out of the office. So we now have the space to be able to do it. So anyway, we made the commitment. They did all these changes and renovations because of the commitment we made. And so no matter what happens, whether our belief is, well, we thought we were gonna do this, but now we're doing this instead, and now we're doing this instead. That's what's gonna happen with this municipality now that we are an established, the first council established the rules of how we can grow. This council established the vision of what you want to do, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. That's why I said thank you to Catherine for asking for this item, because it really demonstrates just how busy and how we'll continue to be busier every single year. So maybe this year we may not be, just the amount, but a year from now, 2 years from now, we may again have to have room for another staff or another one. That new office will have room for anywhere from 3 to 5 staff.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Jim, maybe you want to go down to the office each day for a week or two and see the kind of work that goes on there day after day.
Remember, I've worked with government for 14 years, I saw the kind of work that goes on.
Okay, so is that the no?
That is a no.
Okay,
So now we're.
It seems to me.
our next regular council meeting calendar, for planning purposes as required by the Municipal Government Act, the regular council meeting calendar must be publicly posted for the upcoming 2025 regular council meeting. This calendar is posted on RMB's website, announced on RMB's Facebook page, posted on various bulletin boards, included within the Belfast newsletter, and is included within the Belfast Lions Club calendar. This motion follows the tradition for having 10 scheduled meetings on the third Wednesday each month, except for July and December. And for 2025, council members were polled for availability, and as a result of the same as normal scheduling, council has also opted to call additional or special council meetings throughout the year, if required, and as requested for 2024 were 10 council meetings, regulars, 3 special council meetings, and 6 committee meetings. Proposed for 2025 calendar dates are below. You want me to read off each of them?
No, it's all listed on the record. It basically follows the same as the last year, but that doesn't stop any council member from requesting another meeting.
I thought we were gonna make adjustments for someone's school.
That's why we polled everybody, and Catherine's motion is already in place.
Okay. these-
And my schedule is changing
Right.
these are
weekly
the
right
dates
now, so don't.
Everyone has in front of them the dates that we're working with. And may I have a mover and a seconder to approve the dates for regular council meetings for the year of 2025? Moved by Lynn, seconded by Trish. Oh, I saw Trish.
Okay.
Arm wrestle part.
Lynn's got it.
Lynn and Tricia.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Motion carried. Okay, sustainable two-ferry system at Wood Islands. Councillor Carter?
I'm going to say that thanks to Jeff being able to join us, I'm good. I'm still working on it.
Thanks for setting that up, that's good. Okay, our upcoming event calendar for RMB for December, presented by Ashley Fester.
Oh, Jim has to go talk
Oh.
to him for.
Okay, we're back on number 12, discussion.
I sent tonight, just sent around, I don't see it on the agenda. But I noticed that there's an increased lobbying effort, including by the Premier of the province, that to reduce the fare on the Confederation Bridge. And I think that we should be advocating for the exact same cost, the exact same toll for crossing from Wood Islands here as there is for the bridge. Because if they ever, and there's been too much, there's even discussion up in the Senate to reduce the toll on the bridge to $20, which is probably going to happen when the transfer of ownership, when the responsibility for tolls is turned over to the federal government as opposed to straight crossing, which is going to happen in 8 or 9 years. There's going to be a lot of pressure to reduce that thing to $20. Now that kills the ferry, because nobody is going to want to be spending the amount of money it costs to cross on that ferry now. It's going to cost nothing to go across on the other side. So the two should be tied together. There should be the same toll, the bridge and the ferry should be equal.
Just remind me, I don't recall, and so maybe, I kind of thought that maybe in the Premier's letter when it talked about that, were they talking about a temporary change, or were they talking about a permanent change?
Well, personally, I've been advocating it in the Senate for
Okay.
quite some time. He's
Okay.
introduced and lobbied for it. And I believe that at was it the Chamber of Commerce meeting a while ago? I think that's where it was, that the Premier also brought it up and saying that and advocating for the $20 toll on the bridge for islanders. Well, that's gonna kill the ferry if that ever happened. So the two should be tied together. And that's what we should be advocating for.
So Jim, you're suggesting that RMB send a letter to the Premier advocating?
We certainly should. It should be the same cost to cross on the ferry as it is for the bridge. And
Any discount that's applied to the bridge should also be applied to.
should be applied here.
I'll tell you right now, though, you're never gonna cross the bridge or the ferry for $20. The cost of day-to-day operations for 2 ferries or 1 ferry is significantly larger.
Remember, that's 100% of federal responsibility.
Yeah, but that's,
You want to kill the ferry?
I don't wanna kill the ferry, I'm just saying it's more money to cross the ferry because of the day-to-day expenses of keeping the ferry running. The fuel, the staff, all that has to go into factor with the ferry.
I totally hear what you say, however, BC Kootenai Lake Crossing is 45-minute ferry ride and it's free. So it is doable, and I do agree that we should at least
Well,
ask.
that's where Jim is right. The money would just have to come from somewhere else. It just, we would never be able to pay $20 ourselves the way it's going now because of the
No,
fuel.
it needed to be subsidized.
Yes, exactly. It would have to change
Better.
course, yeah.
That would be the same thing that would happen if there was a reduction in the fare of the
Yeah.
bridge. Somebody is covering the difference somewhere.
So I just need a motion from Jim to send a letter to lobby for what Jim had talked about under Garth's signature. And we would just send a letter. Doesn't hurt to ask.
I'm not certain, but I think that I read somewhere that there's an actual federal subsidy going towards that bridge as well.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much it is, I've never seen figures on it, but I have, did read somewhere that there was some federal money going towards that, not only the toll, but also a subsidy.
So Jim, did you want to make the motion to have the equal, it's an equal
Yes, we should be
fare
advocating
between
for
the
the
bridge
equal
and the
cost
ferry?
to cross over the road. They should be tied together.
Yeah.
If it's $50 at the bridge, it should be $50 for the ferry.
That's why I just need a seconder then.
Seconder. All in favor? Nays? Motion carried.
So we'll draft up something. And we'll
Something-
send it around to council members to take a look at it, and then it'll be under Garth's signature for final approval.
If they ever get that audit done, or they haven't finished that value, right, of the ferry?
I don't think they've even started.
So, if they ever did that, it would give it some teeth, but I mean,
An audit of what, Billy?
the financial benefit
Cost
of the
analysis.
boat.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, if they have that, it can give them something, because right now they just say it's valuable, it's kind of hard for the, provide a subsidy to a private corporation. I mean, as nice as it would be, it's not, that's federal funds to subsidize a private corporation to run the boat. It's gonna be a uphill battle.
Oh, I've seen the old operating agreement, I don't know what the new one's like, but the old one is not, that's not the way it worked.
No, but that's how it's working.
Everything was funded by government.
Yeah, but to put a subsidy on it, there would have to be
Everything
taxes.
was subsidized by government.
Okay, but it's not now.
I really don't know what it is now,
Okay.
but there's definitely federal government is involved in it.
Yes.
To what extent, I have no idea.
Okay. Upcoming events calendar for RMB for December, presented by Ashley Mescher.
So we have the holiday tree lighting event. It's a very popular event for us, and RMB intends to light up the Wood Islands courtyard. We're going to be singing Christmas carols. Bog is going to be leading the children in inspired Christmas decorating ornaments. They'll be making their own. Belfast Consolidated School Choir is going to be joining us, along with entertainer Norman Stewart, local musician who's very excited to be a part of this year. Also, Belfast Rural Fire Department is joining us, along with maybe another
Sandra.
special guest. Yes. Everyone is welcome. Admission is free, and we hope to see you all there. Piggybacking on that, we have our Christmas work party lighting. So council members and their family and friends are being asked to participate in RMB's annual Christmas lighting work party. November 30th and December 1st. We're looking at 1 p.m. start time. I will send out an email just to confirm that with you all shortly.
So in the past, we've been able to do it in one day, however, sort of. However, if it takes a second day, we're also going to be going on that Sunday. But the first one will start at 1 o'clock on Saturday.
I'll send everyone an email in regards to that in the next few days. That's it. That's all I got.
Thank you, Ashley.
Yep.
Okay, new business for the agenda, as discussed and approved in item 3, abuse, neglect, and harassment policy. Councillor Bryson, Edmund, Ashland.
So due to experiences with the annexation exercises, ongoing conflicts that our neighboring municipalities are experiencing, and suggestions from the PI Coalition for Women in Government, the FPIM, and the Association of Municipal Administrators, I believe it's time that we consider creating our own abuse, neglect, and harassment policy. And Ashley has done extensive research on this, and I'll now pass it on to her, and to be followed by a discussion from council.
Thank you. So I reached out to FPIM and a couple other municipalities. I was able to obtain seven different workplace harassment policies, which I'm reviewing. Obviously, reviewing of these policies is going to be very time consuming. The length of each document is roughly around 9 to 12 pages. I am in the very initial phases of my research, but so far the policies that I've reviewed are somewhat vague when it comes to enforcement, and the language in some of them it leaves the door open for interpretation. So when I say policies, I'm looking at internal and external policies within policies, staff to staff policies, council to staff policies, public to staff policies, and public to council policies. Eastern Kings has, their policy has been reviewed by legal, and it's in the finalization process. Since this has been reviewed already, it might be a good template for us to use for RMB. However, I would like to spend time and review all of the policies in order to ensure the one for Belfast covers everything. I would like to thank Eastern Kings, West River, North Shore, the town of Alberton, municipality of Musquesh, town of O'Leary, and Kensington for sharing all of their documentation with me. Appreciate it.
Question, is this go above and beyond what our code of conduct?
Absolutely,
requires? Does it?
yes. Oh, it goes way in detail, like social media policies, you know, council to public policies, like how you deal on a day-to-day.
Right.
Yeah, it's everything. They're
Most-
very deep.
Mostly because of the new social media influence.
Mhm.
Almost all municipalities across the country are now having to create a harassment policy, both for the public and for council and for the meetings and for, so there's a whole gambit. It's a whole new working environment. up
Yeah,
there
it
now.
seems so. See, Three Rivers even went to
Yeah,
a live stream meeting
Virtual.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
checking
this week
into
for
that
harassment reasons
as
as
well.
well.
We may see a budget item for that.
Was it West River that did that too? They-
Sorry?
Or- West River or one of the
It
other
was Eastern
municipalities?
Kings has already had theirs reviewed by legal, but some of these are already, some of the other ones are finalized, but Eastern Kings has been, you know, reviewed by a lawyer. So it might be a good template.
Yes.
And then we can look at some of the other ones and see, you know, maybe there's some other things that might fit our municipality in terms of language.
No doubt the
But like, again,
template may
I'm
save
so
a
in the
lot more.
initial process because, as you can imagine, just looking at these documents can be
Oh, yeah.
like very time consuming.
Item by item would be.
Yeah.
tremendous.
Yeah.
Okay, Charlie first.
Does RMB currently have a workplace harassment policy?
So,
Does
Other
it
than their
work-
code of
What's
conduct.
the code of conduct?
That's for counselors, I'm pretty sure. Because the PEI Employment Standards Act requires it. So we're not in adherence with it from an employment standard. So I don't know, I probably would be putting a priority in making sure that we're in compliance with current legislation before we go and start making policies that aren't required by law.
Most municipalities across the island only had one person, so it was never pushed on the island for municipalities because they had themselves. They're in our discussions with municipal affairs, many municipalities just use the code of conduct legislation that they have to address those concerns. However, as I mentioned earlier, almost every municipality in Canada is now looking at some sort of harassment policy.
Yeah,
For,
so-
not only for the workplace, but for public meetings and.
So did
and
municipal affairs say that we're exempt from the employment standards with PEI?
Nope, they're saying that everybody's starting to work on something. They had basically, it was something that was never pushed in the past.
Initial
But it's
phases
starting to
for
trend.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tricia,
Just wondering, those policies, do they discuss further the likes of, like, sometimes you're in the office by yourself, and I know that there's been some heated people that have come, and you've told me yourself that you lock the door, depending on who comes to it. So do they talk about
Working alone?
working alone situations, panic alarms, making sure safe plans are put into place?
Some of them do, and we had at our meeting, the AMA meeting, they talked in great length about how actually municipal affairs strongly encourages RMB to, and all municipalities to have a panic button in their office, as well as,
Warrant on their person.
yes, worn on their person, as well as, notices of like abuse in this office will not be tolerated, those types of things, so we can point to safety. Having a safety plan for council meetings. This is all stuff we've never even thought about or looked at, but in light of
covered events.
certain
Three Rivers
things,
is a great example.
we have to kind of start looking at things more seriously in terms of safety. So, like I said, I'm just barely scratching the surface with all these policies, with everything that we've had on our plate. So I was kind of hoping over the winter break to carve out some time and, sit by the fire and and look at all
Be
of this
safe.
stuff. Yeah. So anyway, that's
Keep us posted,
I
because
will.
I think that's a priority. Nobody should be working alone in a risk area.
I locked the door for everybody. Just kidding.
You do. I come to the door and it's been locked.
Yeah, no,
You know.
I take it really seriously. So
Good.
anyway, that's it for me on policy.
Any questions or comments otherwise from this subject?
Do we have to, do we need a
No,
motion or
no.
anything?
Have you got any comments or subject, anything to add to this comment?
I don't know, the world must be changing considerably, because when I was
Yes.
administrator of the service center in Montague, we probably have 400 people a day, 400 people a day would come through the door for one thing or another, look for some kind of government service. And I can only recall on one instance when we ever had any kind of a confrontation of any kind.
Well,
Yes, it
unfortunately,
has.
statistics show that conflict and abuse has gone up significantly even since COVID lockdown. And times have changed. It's 2024, almost 2025, and unfortunately, the reality is that it is here. Social media is also not helping with this, and it's not what it was. Wasn't like this 5 years ago. Wasn't like 10, 15,
Even
20 years
last
ago.
year.
It's now current, and our due diligence is that we need to look at this.
Just to provide an example, and this isn't municipal, this is just, the state of where people's emotions are. There was a rumor going around on social media that the Superstore wasn't going to be playing Christmas music. I spoke to, because I went to the Superstore tonight and noticed that, hey, there's Christmas music and decorations, and so I mentioned it to the cashier at the service desk, and she said that she's had 4 people come this week incredibly angry, like demanding these things over
Christmas.
just a made-up post about Christmas music. So this is the state of the world right now.
The world's going crazy.
People are very upset, and they'll choose whatever aspect it is to fulfill their.
Okay, public presentations, a discussion surrounding what other municipalities have proposed and how it is affecting us. Councillor Bryson.
So this is kind of continuation of that, but just as I've been keeping up with local events, there have been many issues raised in neighboring municipalities that have been rather alarming. Speaking for myself, I don't support any legislation that would go against the liberties of its constituents. And as municipalities, we're created for the local level of government and to be the voice of the residents in which they reside. I feel it's our duty as councillors to ensure everyone has equal opportunity to raise their concerns. As such, I believe RMB should strive to be a safe place in which both constituents and council can not only speak openly, but also be provided the respect required to be heard. All concerns, whether there's opposition, deserve the opportunity to be voiced and provided the appropriate inquiry follow-up. I guess I would just like to have an open discussion with everyone at council to ensure the public that we aren't considering or aren't currently considering changing any legislation that would potentially require public speakers to register beforehand, or anything that would make it more difficult for people to speak their concerns.
Jeff Joyce come tonight. He and I had communicated. I was working yesterday, and our communications were like this, and it wasn't until this afternoon. So, and I was like, if we had this in place, he's trying to carve out time out of his busy schedule, and we would have, sorry, you didn't get the deadline. And I don't think that's fair. I think, sometimes people just show up and they're like, I'm not going to speak, and then they want to do a presentation. And I would hate to feel like I'm muzzling that.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm concerned, if people I wish the room would be filled up at council meetings. It would show that people were taking some kind of interest in local government, instead of muttering under their breaths. Because I have different issues, I have different people that mention to me different things about council. And I say, well, come to a council meeting. Come to a council meeting, say what's on your mind. Well, they don't want to do it. And if somebody wants to come and talk, I'll stay here at 2 o'clock in the morning and listen to you. It doesn't bother me a bit.
There's no current changes that are envisioned. However, as has been witnessed with what's happened tonight, there's a whole bunch of things that are going on. Like the harassment policy is now a thing. The Three Rivers having to do a virtual meeting is now a thing. So we have to pay attention to all those things and be prepared for them or plan for things. But right now, there's no reason to, the system that we have in place where we invite the public not only for comments, but to come to a meeting and to participate or view in through Facebook, there's no expected change unless the sky starts falling.
And I guess just to piggyback off that, since I put the request, because I put the request out there to discuss this a while ago now, like the bylaw 2019-01 that I wasn't aware of, like when I revised it, there are some things in there that obviously we've not been following. So I guess that just made me wonder, should we add to our list to review these policies or to start enforcing them, I guess?
No, the answer is yes. Natural evolution of both provincial and municipal governments is to review the policies and legislation that they have on the books and see if they need updating. You pointed out one that has to be reviewed, but in all fairness, all these were put in place in 2019 and or 2020, and so technically they all should be reviewed and just to see if, however, as was pointed out with the work that Ashley's doing right now, just the harassment policy alone, I expect is going to take approximately 4 months to do. So one of the things that should be on a regular basis as we have the time is to look at the the various legislation and policies and update as required. So, yes, they all should be reviewed and updated as soon as we can fit it in.
Same as, like we spoke of earlier on our strategic plan, it's always fluid.
Yeah.
We're going to make changes and update to suit.
Mhm.
It's our plan, we can do what we want.
Mhm. And I guess just leading off of that again, you know, is this something that council can help with? Because obviously we're throwing, you know, a lot of administrative tasks at you and Ashley and Carrie. And so is this something that we can
Well, actually,
help?
there's a role, anytime you change or look at a policy and or legislation, the way the process works is, let's say we're gonna pick the procedures legislation. Then what the process would be is that we send out that to all of council to take a look to see what's there now and to provide feedback about what you think should stay and or be changed and or added, whatever. Administration in the meantime is also doing the same thing and working out a template on how we can do that. They will take the comments that all of council provides, they will then put it into a draft of a new legislation. They'll give it back to council to take a look at, then we'll have council discussion about it, make the changes or whatever. So like I say, each time you do that, it takes about 4 months. And there's a role for all of council and all of administration. So the answer is yes. There's room for council things to do.
14C. Councilor Bryson?
Hey again. So I don't have a very thorough update. Unfortunately, I have spent the last 2 months sick, so I missed 2 of our bigger meetings, but I will provide an update. So October 8th, 2024 was the annual meeting it was at the time with the Honorable Rob Lance. So once a year, the FBIM always meets with the minister in charge of municipalities. So during that meeting, 2 things, I should say, it was a very time-limited meeting, as from the province. So there was only time for a discussion of 2 things. So what the FBI prioritized for that specific meeting was the land use policy and also a memorandum of understanding on consultation and collaboration. There's been a few instances where the province has made decisions without consulting the FBI, and they want to make sure that doesn't continue to happen. Unfortunately,
It continues to happen.
well, no, unfortunately, it really was a waste of everyone's time to attend that meeting, as the following day, literally, 12 hours, not even 12 hours later, Minister Lance was removed as Minister of Housing, Land and Communities and was replaced by Minister Stephen Myers. So, and clearly we have seen where there's been a great shift between the 2 ministers. So we're really back to the drawing board and trying to develop that relationship with Minister Myers. The second event, and again, unfortunately I was unable to attend, was the semi-annual meeting that was held on October 19th. And so these meetings are rather short. They're usually just, half days over just after lunchtime for the semi-annuals. And this one really focused on conflict, so turning conflict into collaboration. There was a municipal panel on conflict, and just an update to anyone who attended. There are some things that we are focusing on this month. There are some changes coming to the Municipal Infrastructure Fund. Unfortunately, as that's currently worded, we aren't eligible for it. It's just for municipalities who have sewer and water. And then just some ongoing discussions surrounding federal funding, because there have been some announcements lately, back and forth between the federal liberals and conservatives. So just trying to stay on top of that. I know this comes up again later on, but I guess does anyone have any specific questions just surrounding the update? I'll have a more detailed one for next month, pending no new sicknesses. Yeah, for January. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bryson. Jim Kenny is up next with future membership.
Okay, as you're well aware, I have been against our having anything to do with the Federation of Prince Edward Island Municipalities, simply because of the fact that they're unable to represent these small municipalities. Their interests are all in the ones. As I can see, almost their entire executive has always been the large municipalities and dealing with issues that are very different from the small rural municipalities. And this was sort of brought home to me when I started reading the Municipal Governments Act, the way that it was put together. They were consulted on that, and that's what they came up with. And it was often it was directly unworkable, and they should have known for small municipalities to become involved with that. I did a little survey of my own. I phoned about a dozen municipalities, and none of them are compliant. And you very well know, because you've reported yourself, Bob, none of them are compliant. All you'll get is a phone call saying they'll call you back. Later on in the next item, it's going to come up how I think that we can solve that. But I just don't think that they're representative of the 45 small municipalities in the province that do not have centralized services. And we're probably the largest of all of those at 1,700 residents. A lot of them are very small, 3, 4, 5, 600 people.
I can speak to that, but I think the best person to speak to that is Catherine.
I certainly can. In regards to the MGA, RMB wasn't even a member back then when all those consultations were taking place. Can't speak for any other municipality because I just don't know. In regards to the discussion around being unable to represent small municipalities or only being for large municipalities, again, I can only speak for what I've seen thus far. I think it would be my opinion that oftentimes these municipalities aren't at the table, and therefore, if you're not at the table, it's very difficult to be represented and to voice your opinions. We, speaking for the board of directors right now, we have a very strong rural representation, and those aren't just, larger of the rural municipalities. There's a board member from Murray Harbor on there as well, so actually our end is quite well represented. Additionally, I am vice president of rural municipalities now, and y'all know that I can be quite vocal, and
What? Say it again.
and I like to make a lot of work for everyone, so certainly I am trying my hardest to ensure that municipalities such as ours that do not provide water and sewer and don't wish to provide water and sewer are still granted this equal opportunities that larger municipalities are. Obviously, I see value in us being at the table, or I wouldn't have put my name forward to sit as a board member.
Trish has the floor.
My stance hasn't changed from when we talked about this, and I basically copy exactly what you said. We can't have a voice, we have no ability to have a voice unless we are there. And I actually want to say a huge thank you for spending that time to represent our area and to give up more of your very busy lifestyle to be able to be our voice. So thank you, and I appreciate what you've done for RMB.
Here.
If I can add to what Catherine said, in regards to the MGA, I had quite a few discussions with the FPIM regarding the MGA. They had lobbied rural municipalities for 8 years to give them something, a comment, anything about the MGA, the proposed MGA. They received nothing, I mean zero. And they lobbied for 8 years to get somebody to say something. Do they like it? Do they don't like it? What, you know. So that's why it didn't seem to make any sense to rural municipalities in the MGA, because their voice was not actually in there, because nobody would respond. Now, going forward in the future, as we know, Councilor Bryson is our representative, but she's also a rural representative on the FPIM, so that we can have a voice in there. However, it's going to be really important for us to have a seat at the table in the next few years, probably 5, because of the lands plan that they want to do and they want to consult with municipalities on. So we definitely want to make sure a rural voice is heard on it. We definitely want to make sure that municipal affairs gives the communities the money they need to run their own official plan, which is a consultation that's going to be run through the FPIM and whatever else the government plans to do. So I would strongly recommend that we stay for a rural voice.
Anybody else got anything to say
Yes, I do.
on this topic?
Yep.
Okay, go.
It's all getting too complicated. My experience in rural Prince Edward Island, they're happy as can be if we've got a reliable electrical service, that our roads are kept passable, and we've got a health system. And if we've got those 3 things, that basically covers the needs of most of rural PEI. People move out here, they'd like to be kind of left alone. You know, they're country people, they're not city people. And too much of the modeling is done around large population centers. And that's where so much of the wealth of any province or country is developed in the rural areas, in the agricultural sector, in the forestry, in the mines, in the fisheries. But what happens to it is always decided in town.
Okay, I'm really confused. You're kind of fighting against your own comps is
No,
what I'm hearing.
I've got another item on here that's coming up.
Yeah,
Right.
next,
That
go.
deals with that.
I'm confused because one thing you're wanting to say is we don't have a voice, so it's only big city people, but we have a voice that's trying to change that to help better for rural.
Okay,
So
do you want to skip the Downey's promotional idea first and go to the next item I had on there?
Well, this body has to decide whether they want to stay. You're suggesting that they get out of the
Well, I think we
FPIM.
should, I think that.
Right. And
That's right.
unless there's, you have a seconder for a motion to remove ourselves from that,
No,
basically.
that's probably
that
not
would-
gonna happen, but I think we should be, I don't think it serves us at all, it's just a waste of $2,000 or $3,000.
So you're putting a motion on the floor, Jim, or no?
Sure, yes, I will, put a motion that we withdraw.
To
from Federal.
state your
I put a-
motion, please.
I put a motion that we withdraw from the PEI Federation of Municipalities.
Do we have a seconder for said motion? Motion defeated.
Okay, that's fine.
All I can say, Jim, is I hope that in the next few years, I'll be able to change your mind and that I'll be able to represent rural municipalities the way that they've deserved right along.
Okay, up next, thank you, Catherine. Up next is the Down East promotional idea.
So this is not actually a council idea, but I am working and trying to get some funding from tourism and some other areas to bring a specific promotional idea in the spring down to this area where we see, basically I want to call it Doors Open Down East, where every business has doors open for one weekend where people can come down, they can see Down East, they can see our area. A lot of the times, Down East is just where we get on the ferry, and that's got to stop. We are here, we are growing, and so I'm trying to really promote Down East. And it will be, though, it's not just our municipality, but what I am hoping that will provide to our municipality is more people seeing how awesome our area is. So that's all.
Good, thank you. Good luck with that. Okay, Jim Kenny, you ready to go for the lobby?
I think that it's very evident that some of the most of the Municipal Government Act is procedural, I would call it. 130 pages, probably 120 of it, tell you how to run a meeting and the rules that you have to follow. But there was 3 items on there. The one is was the ability to amalgamate, which drew a lot of attention. And the other one was development of an official plan, which is simply would never fly in a small municipality. And the third one for these small ones is that it was advocated that they have an office that's open 20 hours per week, which is not suitable, and that they do not follow it. Most of the province does not follow that at all. They're not in compliance with it. So I think that we should give a letter to Stephen Myers. He's the new minister of and that government should sponsor a forum and ask for representation from all the small municipalities that are not involved with centralized services to come together and sit down with them and to begin to refine the terms of the relationship between these small municipalities and the PEI government. And that is going to be a different relationship than what we have with the larger municipalities. It's like oil and water, I think. And I think that we should ask him to promote, to sponsor a meeting of these small municipalities, because we're never going to get the types of things into a municipal government act that are going to work for us, unless we have the opportunity as a group to come together and start to define them through dialogue.
You want to draft up a letter and?
I'll draft up a letter.
Maybe
I've got a
council
comment
next
before I get to
month,
that.
and I'm pretty sure.
Is it okay? I guess my only suggestion, knowing our experience trying to get a meeting with the minister as the FBIM, which is already established, and Lance himself kept cutting back the time that we could even spend with him. So I guess with my experience with that, I would suggest if we're going to try to do this movement, which I think is a great idea, I think that there should be a meeting of the municipalities separately without the minister first, so that we can have an open dialogue and discussion to try to come up with some centralized ideas. Because I can tell you right now that the minister isn't going to sit through a brainstorming activity. The department won't allow it. But if you could get all the municipalities together and come up with, a small list of concerns, then it would be more likely to get that meeting with the minister.
Yeah, we're kind of saying the same things. I'm not advocating for the minister necessarily to be there, but I'm asking for government to sponsor the meeting, because they should have recognized that the MGA as it exists at this point is not suitable for small municipalities. And if they're looking for solutions, they're not going to find them unless they call the small municipalities together and say, what is the issues? What's wrong with the existing MGA? Can you operate under these terms? Because we have to have a relationship with them. It's that simple.
Catherine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way the FPIM is already set up is they have a rural caucus. And the FPIM has the organization to be able to call a meeting of that rural caucus for exactly that, to get they would invite rural municipalities to a meeting. But if you're trying to set up a structure outside of the FPIM, now you're going to be asking councilors and or somebody to set up or create an organization, which is huge, in order to have this kind of meeting.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm not asking for a separate organization. I'm simply calling for a symposium sponsored by government to the rural small municipalities, to send representatives to a meeting, to sit down, maybe on Saturday, a 4 or 5 hour meeting. The minister doesn't even have to be there, but to have an open dialogue as to what is the issues with the existing MTA, and why is it not working for the small municipalities, because it doesn't, because nobody's in compliance with it. And they'll never find out what's wrong unless they talk to us. It has to be sponsored by government.
Yeah,
My only concern with organizing something like this through the FPIM is that rural caucus would only include municipalities who are members of the FPIM. And I think, if I'm understanding correctly, what Jim's
you could invite others, though, no?
I don't know if the FPIM, if we did it through the FPIM, they would. But yeah, if I'm understanding correctly, like what you're targeting would be kind of those municipalities who don't have representation at the FPIM.
That's exactly right, and most of them
Right.
don't. And it's got to be sponsored by government itself. That gives it a little bit of authority that you're saying, please come to us and tell us what you want. Come on Saturday, February the 26th or something, and we'll put on a meal for you, sit down and break into groups and give us the answers. And I'll go to that meeting.
So as a
set it up?
stat,
No, I
the
no, but
legwork
I
and
said,
set it up.
I'll write the letter, and I'll write the rationale for it.
that would be great
I
if
write a
you
lot better
provided
than
us with a draft. But the stats on that is that 68, I think these are the right stats, 68% of municipalities are unincorporated, not compliant with MGA because they're unincorporated. So they're not part of a municipality, they're listed as an unincorporated community. The other 32% are a registered, incorporated as a municipality. And so they are all working within the MGA. So the target audience that you're talking about are the 68%, which is the unincorporated communities. Now there are some municipalities who are incorporated, who are not yet compliant with the MGA, but that are working toward being compliant. We were just at the Association of Municipal Administrators, and that is their goal, to find a way to get all of the municipalities compliant and up to date. That's why they bring in speakers and
Why are they listed on the rural municipalities, PEI Federated Municipalities website as being a municipality?
They are a municipality.
There's over 40 of them.
Yeah, they are a municipality, they're just not incorporated municipality. They're still a municipality.
It's
Geographically.
because they're members, so
Pardon?
if they're listed on,
Geographically.
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, if
exactly.
they're listed on the FPIM, it's because they pay dues into the FPIM. That's
We open
the
national-
ones who are part of the municipal directory. And then, any other municipalities that aren't listed on the directory would just be subject to the municipal fairs.
Well, I phoned about a dozen of them who were listed, and I couldn't get an answer from anybody.
Yeah.
Nobody's in the office. So there's obviously something wrong.
All right, thank you, Jim. Other, I'd like to speak on the other for a moment, if I can. RMB's representation to the Remembrance Day at Belfast went very well, I thought. Despite the rain, I would have went to Iona too, but I didn't think I could stand that much more rain. I was pleased to see the pipe band back this year, since it hasn't been years since they've been around. And there was a good turnout at Belfast, which was great. Charlie, got anything to add from Iona?
It was really nice.
Thanks for doing that, by the way.
No problem.
We skipped over an item.
We did?
We asked the rural municipal, we sent a letter off to Lands, asking them to start sending us building permits. That, because as a representative of a rural municipality, we should know, we should have some kind of idea of what kind of activity is taking place in our municipality.
We went through all this half an hour or more ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you here for the meeting? No?
Yeah,
We
I
went through
was.
this an hour ago.
When
Yeah, I think that I
I,
was. We had a long discussion about them sending out our building application.
yeah.
Yes, we did.
I must have fallen asleep to that.
Okay.
So in our lands meeting, when we said that because the annexation, the official plan and development bylaw and municipal affairs said they didn't want us to do one anymore, we then brought it to their attention. Can we have, well, actually, Garth and I, we brought that suggestion to them in a meeting previous, if we could have something similar to the CIC. However, at this meeting, we said, since that's not happening, can we look at CIC? Well, before, they weren't willing to look at it. Now, they are willing to take a look and they would get back to us.
I believe
If there's a process that they could.
When I
I
asked you
think
about it,
last
you told me.
time we got Snickers out of the whole room,
Right.
and this time it was Snickers out of half the room.
Yeah.
So,
You're starting to gain
So,
ground.
you're right, so anyway, they did say that they were gonna look at seeing if there was a process they could use, because municipal affairs no longer was requiring an official plan.
I think they should still send us the copies of building applications so that we have an understanding of what's happening in our own.
Yeah,
Right,
community.
that's-
we understand
It's
what we're,
unacceptable for them to say there's no policy to do that.
Right, that's what we're at, that's what we asked them. So that's what they're gonna try and get us a model where, or we're hoping,
Bob,
the work they're gonna do is gonna give us a model for
when I
that.
came and saw you about that particular issue, you told me directly, and I've almost got your words quoted, that we were told that they couldn't do that,
Right,
that there was no policy, and I said, that is unacceptable. We should call the minister, send a letter to the minister and tell him to instruct his staff to start sending them to us. Because it's not a big deal to send us a fax or
I
something.
think they
You're
can't
right.
though, they have no legislation.
I did,
Uh,
I
They
did say
did
that.
it for the last,
No.
for 25 years.
I did say.
we don't anymore.
I did say that, it was a meeting that Garth and I attended, and that's what they told us. However, in this last meeting that we had, because the MGA is no longer an official plan, and development bylaw is no longer a requirement in the MGA,
It's back on the
they
table.
are now saying, well, you need to have some ability, so now we're gonna look at maybe creating a process or a policy so that you can look at that. So like I said before, they at first laughed at us and said, no way, we're not gonna do nothing. And now they're saying, okay, maybe we're gonna have to do something. So we don't know what it's gonna look like yet, but
We're working on it.
We're lobbying for that to happen, just like you had asked.
So we don't want to send a letter to Stephen Meyer, start to tell the staff to send it out.
We're working on
They
it.
need a policy, they just need to.
We're working with Lands and Municipal Affairs on exactly your request.
Anything else? Okay, our next meetings, we have a tree lighting event that will take place in the courtyard in the Wood Islands Market, starting at 6 p.m. on Saturday, December 7th. And then move into our upstairs meeting hall for Carol's entertainment and Santa! Well, there we are. We're a little late on it, but anyway, we got it. Reminder, there is no regular council meeting scheduled for December of 2024 as per MGA council calendar, and the RMB office will be closed over the Christmas break from December the 18th through to January 2nd.
Except for Bob working on the budget.
Except for Bob working on the budget on his days off.
And Ashley will be working
I'll
from
be
home.
doing policy work,
Yeah,
I guess.
from home.
Is there any other business?
Yes, just the in camera, so we will now need to close the meeting to the public, and we.
Goodbye, Facebook, and Merry Christmas.